What do you think about monuments? Monuments, you know, those things that we build to what? To remember stuff. We build a lot of monuments. We love to put up statues and parks and reflecting ponds and all kinds of monuments. We like monuments to big things, little things. We like monuments to the horrific or the monumentous. We erect monuments to people. Sometimes famous people, sometimes infamous people. We erect monuments, I learned, to animals even. Just down the road, there's a monument to a horse. Hambletonian, right? He came from Goshen, apparently. Matter of fact, even in Enterprise, Alabama, not far from where I went to flight school, there is the largest monument to an insect, the boll weevil. We love monuments. But what if I told you that of all the different types of monuments that we've erected, that perhaps one of the world's most famous tourist attractions might actually be a monument to forgetfulness? Dr. James Dobson, in his book Coming Home, wrote this. He says, the Taj Mahal, you know, the big palace in India? The Taj Mahal is one of the most beautiful and costly tombs ever built. But there is something fascinating behind its beginnings. You see, in the year 1629, when the favorite wife of Indian ruler Shah Jahan died, I don't know if anybody likes that title of being the favorite wife. But at any rate, when the favorite wife of this Indian ruler, Shah Jahan, died, he ordered that there would be a magnificent tomb built as a memorial for her. That was his affection for her. And so what he did is he found the most beautiful, bucolic place that he could in all of his land. He had her casket placed in the very center of this place, and he ordered that we would know of as the Taj Mahal would be built around her casket. Well, this was no small feat, and weeks turned into months, months turned into years, and over time, his grief for the loss of his favorite wife turned into a passion for this project of construction that he'd begun. So much so that one day when he was there and he was supervising and he was checking up and he was overseeing the work of the construction of the Taj Mahal, he's walking around and he tripped over something, an old wooden box. And he was offended that this decrepit crate should be in the middle of this luxurious palace, so he had the workers throw it out. And it wasn't until months later when he realized that that old wooden box that he had thrown out actually what? It was the coffin for his favorite wife. It was her remains that he discarded like so much construction debris. You see, the original purpose for the memorial was lost in the details of construction. Now, I bring that up today because, you know what, in many ways, we're an awful lot like Shah Jahan. Guys, I'm not saying that you're allowed to have a favorite wife. We don't play that here. But what I am saying is that the very thing that should have been at the center of his labor became what? Lost in the details. That as we go through life in the midst of our daily push and shove routine, we forget what should be foremost in our thinking. We forget the one who gave us life and gives purpose and meaning to our lives. We forget God. We forget His grace. And we forget that we live for Him. He does not exist for us. It's a dilemma that's not new. We didn't come up with it. We didn't invent it. And as we look into the pages of Scripture today, we're going to go to Joshua chapter 4. We're going to see how it is that one leader of God's people determined that those who were under his authority would not forget God in their daily lives. He would erect what? A monument. We go to Joshua chapter 4, and I'll begin in verse 4. We'll read 4 through 7. Scripture says this: Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and said to them, "Go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan." That would be the Jordan River. "Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, to serve as a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask you, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. And these stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever." So what we see here is a leader concerned that future generations might forget how they had gotten to this point in their journey. They might forget the one who had brought them this far. And so Joshua determined to erect a memorial. Now tomorrow is what? Our Memorial Day. And if it reminds us of anything, it reminds us of the fact that we are what? A forgetful people. Tell the truth, shame the devil. Okay? As soon as the emergency passes, we go right on as if it never happened. As soon as the tragedy is over, we go about our daily lives. We are a forgetful people. We forget not only tragedy, but we oftentimes forget blessings. And we forget that we enjoy those blessings because of someone else's sacrifice. And what is true of us today was equally true of the Israelites 3,500 years ago. So, as we identify the event, we can identify with the people who had this experience. And perhaps we can learn from Joshua that as he was teaching them, let's allow him to teach us today as well. We have the children of Israel, the sons and the daughters of Jacob. And they're prepared to walk out of a 40-year journey in the desert into a land flowing with what? Milk and honey. You don't want to mix those two. That's not really all that tasty. They're going to a place that has unimaginable blessing for them. A place that God has prepared for them. And their leader, Joshua, wants to make sure that they don't forget how they got there. Remember how it is that they even came up there in the first place. They'd been imprisoned where? Imprisoned back in Egypt. Not imprisoned, enslaved. They'd been enslaved in Egypt, but set free by whom? By God. A miracle of God working through Moses, who heard their suffering and brought about their release. Remember how it was that God had what? Parted the Red Sea to prepare a way for them to escape. And then just as their pursuers, their captors were coming after them, what happened to the sea? It crashed in over the top of them and swept them away as if they'd never existed in the first place. Remember how it was that they had been to this place in their journey before. They had come up right to the very edge of their blessing and refused to enter in. So it was that God sent them on a journey to overcome their fears and their doubts, to leave behind their former way of life. Remember how it was that God had provided for them all those 40 years. They never went hungry. They never went thirsty. The clothes that they wore never wore out. I don't know how it works in your house, but if you've got a pair of shoes that you've been wearing for 40 years, that's a good pair of shoes. I can't keep shoes on my son for a week, it seems like. God provided for them every step of the way. And remember how it is that by all natural means, what should have happened to them as a people out in the desert? They should have died off, shouldn't they? That should have been the last that anybody had heard of the Israelites. Did they die out? Oh no. If anything, what? They flourished. Under God's provision and God's protection, they became a mighty people. And so it is that He has brought them right up to the Jordan River. And they're about ready to cross. And when they cross, what? There's no going back. And so it is that Joshua wants to make sure that they know how they got there. So that when future generations look at that pile of stones, 12 stones that used to be on the bottom of the Jordan River, 12 stones that now stand as a monument to God's faithfulness, they'll know how they came to be there. They had one representative from each tribe. They went out what just a few moments ago had been the Jordan River at flood stage. And now it's what? It's dry. It's like Route 9W or better. And they took up stones. He says, carry it on their shoulders. So it tells you, these aren't like golf ball sized stones. These are some pretty good pieces of granite and marble and what have you. And they're going to build a monument. And I believe that if Joshua were here right now and he were speaking to us, he might share with us the same message that he shared with the Israelites that day. He would say that we need to be mindful to know how it is that we got this far and remember our God. He would say, I think, first of all, remember how it is that God freed you. Remember how it is that God brought you out of slavery. Isaiah chapter 61, verse 1, Scripture says this, the Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim what? Freedom for the captives, and release from darkness for the prisoners. You see, we were created by God to be a free people. What was the instruction that He gave to Adam and Eve? You are free. You are free to do and to eat and to live however you want. You are free. And we traded that freedom for what? Slavery. We rebelled against our God and we traded true freedom for slavery. Slavery to our desires, slavery to our emotions, slavery to our pride, slavery to sin. It happened in the garden, but it's continued to happen since then. And throughout the ages, God has not been sitting by idle. You and I, we might say, well, that's what you get. That's what you deserve. But God doesn't give us what we deserve. He gives us what love demands.